Right, we're on.
Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to this latest edition of Psychology Performance Professional Discussion. Today we're really pleased to have Dr. Mark Partington on with us, who's got a kind of long history in coaching and research related around football, alongside his academy role at Wigan Athletic. So Mark, if you could just give us a little bit of a background around those kind of roles and research that you've produced around that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm based at Edgehill University, which is in the northwest, not far from Liverpool, those that don't know. My main roles there around sort of lecturing, researching and consultant in sports coaching and coach development. They're the sort of areas that I'm quite passionate about and linking to industry as much as I can in terms of the research that I do. I'm also, like you said, at Wigan Athletic. I've been at Wigan Athletic now for about 18 years, very long time. So yeah, I've been there in a number of different roles across different phases, age groups, and currently part-time working with the 13s, 14s. I'm also part of my role there is head of research and coach support. So I do some work in that area, and I'm also an FA coach developer on the UEFA Cs and UEFA Bs. So yeah, that gives a little bit of a background to me, James. I hope that's enough.
Yeah, so I'm really kind of interested in this sort of dual role as coach and researcher. So how does that work? I guess you've got kind of a ready-made kind of sample there with the boys. So what sort of research have you done around that? More around the coaching side? You say I know you've done work around kind of silence in coaching and the coach support side of it.
Yeah, so I suppose with my research, I'm really keen to start with like practice problems that are in practice, and working backwards from there and designing projects that can sort of support practice, if that makes sense, or certainly link into practice. If you mentioned silence there, that's just a project that we're currently undertaking. We've done some interviews, we're doing some survey work around and building a typology of silence, so the different types of silences that coaches use. So that's a particular area that we're interested in at the minute. That links to the stuff I've done around coach behaviour, so I'm quite keen on coach behaviour. Done research projects around questioning that's now moved into stuff like more dialogic pedagogy. We've also done stuff around feedback. So I'm quite interested in that, the different types of coach behaviours that we can use as coaches. And the idea there is sort of like evidence-informed practice in terms of what quality feedback is, what quality dialogic pedagogy is, and then trying to look at that through that perspective. PhD was around coaching philosophy and trying to deconstruct that and coming up with some actual like philosophical questions that could help coaches in terms of their practice along the lines of values and beliefs. So that was sort of the PhD and sort of carrying on that project moving forwards. And then I'm doing stuff within like coach development, coach learning. We've got a project going with a PhD student who's currently looking at coach learning and non-learning within 3 football academies, which is coming out some really interesting insights around like motivations, incentives of these coaches and why learning is taking place or not. So that just gives you a bit of an idea around the general research stuff that is going on.
Wow.
Yeah, great stuff. So yeah, do you kind of you get your PhD, your masters, undergrad students in at Wigan as well to kind of give them some more sort of real life stuff?
Yeah, I think that's important. So we have dissertation students who are collecting data within a particular football academy, other football academies as well. We have MRes students, we're doing master's projects, PhD students who are doing projects in particular football academies, which is interesting. Yeah.
Nice. Mark, I'm really interested in like your project on silence.
Okay.
Is there any more you can tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we've collected data. I can sort of bring up some of the areas. Bear with us, sorry, off the top of my head. But yeah, we've sort of got some. Basically, we've gone out there. It started off with sort of, and again, I'm making a little bit of an assumption here around, so with the coach development work I've been doing with grassroots coaches, we don't seem to be, when I go out and observe, we don't seem to be very silent. We seem to want to talk a lot. And that's in games and in practices when I've gone out and done in situs. And for me, there's a value of silence as like a pedagogical strategy. And there's things we can do when we're being silent, whether we're planning our next intervention or we're actually spending time noticing things that relate specifically to our intended outcomes. So I think there's actually stuff we can do with silence and thinking about it more as a pedagogical tool. And then when speaking to academy coaches, they seem to, maybe use silence a little bit more as a strategy, possibly, not always, but as a strategy. And then from there, we've sort of designed this project thinking around the different types of silence that coaches use. So we've done some interview work, we've done some surveys or in the process of the survey at the minute in terms of understanding the different types. At the minute, I don't mind sort of sharing these. So some of the types that come out of it so far and still in the early stages, like the general themes, there's sub-themes under that, but some of the general themes are coaches using silence for like self-analytical thinking, we've called that. So actually thinking about reflecting on the session design, players' performance, analysing the opposition. So actually self-analytical thinking. We've started to look at one around encouraging active athlete participation. So actually using silence. So technique repetition is happening without them, obviously, the coach barking at them while they're actually concentrating on the technique if they're at that stage. One other use of silence within that area is like to prevent over coaching. So there's the coaches have got some strategies, and we're just trying to create a sort of like a typology of that to help them. Something a little bit different is some coaches are using silence to sort of manage interactions and relationships. So like silence as an emotional restraint or silence to protect or support players emotionally. So basically we're just collating these different ways of silence, or coaches could use silence, and then putting together a bit of a typology which will have a clear definition and then, an example of that. So that's where we are with that, Tom, sort of.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I mean, it's very like anecdotal, but I've got a role in an academy and watch a lot of sessions. And what I see, as you're just bouncing off your like points around silence, like I've seen coaches use silence when a session's going really well and they're silent. Maybe there's that self-analytical bit. I sense players feel quite assured by it because it's going well. The coach isn't saying anything. We're all right, and that the climate of the session for a short period of time is like active, positive. But when things aren't going so well and the coach uses silence, I sense the players are looking for something.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I sense that really like changes the psychological climate of the session because they're like, oh, hang on a minute. Are we going to get something here or not? So I don't know if you've had any, you've ever seen things like that, or you've started to look at players' perceptions of coaches' silence.
Yeah, we've not included the players, but that's certainly something, to be doing. I think some of the feedback work that I've been doing in the past has always been from the coach's perspective, and we're now looking at like from the players' perspective around sort of feedback literacy. I think that's important. But bringing back to your question around silence, related to that point, I suppose, is that I've certainly heard coaches talk about let's say there's a game and they're losing in that game and they're struggling, that coaches should be more vocal to help their players out. So there's that sort of like, if you like, that reason for silence. And then, is that actually a good reason for silence? Do we need to check and challenge that? Where's that belief around the need for silence come from? So I think the way we're moving with this is, the uses of silence, and I'm thinking out loud as I'm going here a little bit, but as we use silence, what are the reasons why we do it? And can it be more pedagogical? Can it be more for the better of the player, funny enough, instead of, we've always done it that way, or we feel that that's the reason to do it. Yeah, don't know if that answers the question, but sort of.
Yeah, it does. It's just really insightful that the use of silence, because I think like if used correctly and then there's further interventions, it can really promote learning, and you can bring out learning in players, because if they've got no help from the coach, they've got to solve a problem themselves, haven't they?
And sometimes they need support and help with that, but then it's what that help and support is. So by actually being silent and thinking about your intervention next might be a good strategy, instead of just jumping straight in. You know, what do they need at this point? So actually using silence in that way as well. And I'm a big fan of silence, and I think in terms of like noticing and spending time looking for things that you can actually intervene and have impact upon based on your intended outcomes of the session. So you're not jumping in all the times and trying to correct everything. You're sort of looking back and noticing, and I can actually intervene here and have some impact with this individual. So right, I'm going to do it. And how are you going to do it? Right, actually, I might take them out of the session. Doesn't need me to stop the whole session. I'll take them out. They need telling here. I'm not going to question them. They need telling because they clearly don't know it. Or do I question and check them? You know what I mean? So there's some strategy built in before you actually jump in and intervene. So just some ideas maybe.
Then. And I would, I'd probably even say like those strategies are partly going to be age dependent.
Yeah.
You know, very, very young children might need just a bit of guidance, and older teenage adolescents, a question might be really, really appropriate.
Yeah, and probably to an individual level, doesn't it, within that group as well? When you really, you'll know we've been in the academy, James, and you, Tom, as well. Is it where you're at in terms of Doncaster and viewing coaches? Is that, what is the right time to jump in and the level of that? Good.
Yeah, nice. Go on, James. Sure, you've got some questions for Mark.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to what you were saying, Tom, really, about maybe more from the player's perspective. So I think we've had a kind of a mix of guests on here. Some have looked at it from the kids' perspective, some from the coaches. The Rusty was kind of a bit of both. But yeah, to give it more of a psych sort of flavour to it, I guess we're looking at things like self-determination theory, and there's that autonomy side where you're not always barking instructions, like you say, it's not always command style. So yeah, just interested kind of where you may be looking in the future to do that sort of methodology wise, and are you doing it across ages and sort of abilities and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I suppose that's another debate, a topic around this idea of instruction and when we instruct and whether we should instruct. I think instruction has a place. If we don't know, then we might need to tell them. I think we've lost that a little bit in our coaching, and we can't always question. We can't always, go in these weird and wonderful places. They're still important. I did talk, when was it? A couple of days ago, around this idea of like a pendulum. I do feel in coaching, and certainly around coach behaviours, if we have instruction at one side and questioning, I'm not a big fan of the guide discovery terminology, but instruction, questioning, with the pendulum seems to go one way and we stop, and we now seem to be wanting asking questions all the time and them sort of things. For me, coaching, it's just the pendulum's always swinging, and it's what's best for the player in the environment at that time. And actually, it might be instruction, or it might be feedback, it might be silence, it might, you know what I mean? So it's, for me, it's about that pendulum. The pendulum always swings, it never stops.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you look at like spectrum of teaching styles, I'm sure you kind of evolved past that, but yeah, things do seem to go around in cycles, don't they? So 1 minute it's all player led, then it's all command, and it, like you say, it's kind of knowing when and where to do each one rather than one's better than the other, isn't it, really? So
yeah, I believe that. I believe in this idea of, like, as coaches, we have a toolbox, and we have tools within it, and understanding the evidence behind them tools, I think, is important, personally, from my perspective, and how we do them, how we deliver them tools with quality, and then we choose the right tool for the job, don't we, as such. So I'm quite a strong believer in that sort of idea. I'm very sort of like principle driven. So what's the principles? What's the idea? And then, the method the principle doesn't always direct the method. In some ways, it's like who you're working with that directs the method and how we do it, but you stick to your principle. I can give a specific example like that. Like we're doing some talking currently around that inquiry-based learning. And within that inquiry-based learning, if that's the principle that you're following within your practice, you can still instruct in there. It's not a case of just questions and past experiences. It does depend. It does depend. It's a bit of a cop-out, but it does depend, and you make the choice best for the individual, don't you? You're working with and the environment that you're in.
Yeah, I think that's one of Dave Collins's phrases there, and it depends, or professional judgment and decision making. But yeah, I think
it depends, but I think it depends, but you know what I mean?
I think
not
a lot
just
of that. A lot of that is down to experience. I think it's good that you've got the evidence and your principles, but it doesn't always measure up on the grass, does it? I mean, there's a lot of kind of constraints-led evangelists who say that's the only way, and you will learn thoroughly but very slowly. But then you go into an academy setting and people are telling you, that's you're not learning quick enough. You need to use more command style. So yeah, it's like you say, it's using the right tool at the right time, isn't it? And comes through experience and getting out of the kind of classroom a bit, I guess.
Just maybe moving on a little bit, Mark. So you work predominantly with, like, at the minute you're saying 13, 14-year-olds as a part-time coach. Are you able to maybe describe, like, I guess they've just come into what would be the youth development phase, aren't they?
Yeah.
And that's from the foundation development phase. What are you currently practicing, like trying to transition them through into that new phase? Because sometimes they're very different. Like we did a parent workshop the other day, and how they're different. How do you manage that transition to move them through into, like, your phase?
Yeah. No, good question. And they've got a lot going on as well, haven't they? There's other things externally, like school changes at school. There's a lot of change.
Yeah, and adolescents just coming on at around that age, around that sort of area, and this is where, like, I'm quite interested in that developmental psychology area, but I'm also interested in transitions, and it can be a bit of a change going into the YDP.
Yeah, no, and it is, and it is a challenge. Just from my experiences, I suppose, and these are just my opinions. I think as soon as they come into the phase, we try and connect with them. Like, that's really important, and it's not necessarily always about the football, although you will connect through the football because that's like a common interest, if that makes sense. But try and connect in other ways, and try and get a connection with these individuals within the team. And then they feel they can talk to you about other things and how they're feeling and how they're transitioning, if you like, from one phase to the other. We quite often ask them, what they're finding difficult, what is tough, how can we support you in them sort of ways. I know you're linking it more to sight, but the physical one is quite an obvious one, isn't it? When they're all at different sizes, all going through, like, peak height velocity at different stages, like, we manage that. We manage workload and load, and I suppose it's the same in the sort of, the psych sort of corner as well. Not all our boys come out of school. Not all our boys will engage in full sessions. They will get supported in other ways as well. It's about, for me, like, looking at them as individuals. But it is a challenge. It's a massive challenge dealing with lots of individuals in a group, especially across the 13s, 14s. We work right across. I coach under 13s and under 14s.
Right, okay.
And there's loads of differences within them two groups in itself. So yeah.
Yeah, because at one end, I guess you've got, well, I know having a 14-year-old son, you've got some kids that could be 6'1", 6'2", and some that still look like 10-year-olds.
Yeah. And I think the other one in academies as well, linking that in some ways, is we try and teach. I know this sounds silly in some ways, but we try and relate to them as kids as well. Sometimes it's over professionalized, and we're talking to them, I feel sometimes, like adults. They're still kids. I link it back to my 13-year-old, how I speak to him. You know what I mean? It's sometimes different to how you see adults talk to children within an academy. I'm not sure that's the case. We're still seeing them as kids and speaking to them in that way, differently to what we would do with adults, and similar to the foundation phase, different to what we talk to them in that way.
we see some of that, Mark. I don't know if you know sort of Megan Hill, some of her work on growth, maturation, and talent selection. The coaches have talked about those bigger early developers, coaches being a bit harsher, expecting a bit more, maybe treating them a bit more adult-like, and being a bit softer, more lenient, higher ratings for the less developed players that haven't gone through that growth spurt yet. Do you ever catch yourself, or are you ever aware of coaches catching themselves just getting into that trap of, you've got a 6'1" bruiser, but they're actually 13 and a half?
Yeah. Well, it's hard, isn't it, when they've got a tash and a beard, and you know what I mean?
And you're looking up to them.
You're looking up, and yeah, it is difficult. But yeah, I fall into that trap. I'm quite happy to say that sometimes I have to reflect back and go, I've talked to him like we're talking now in some ways. If this is an adult conversation, I don't know, but you know what I mean, in that way. And they're not. And yeah, sometimes you have to think about the level of the conversation possibly, and how much information we're giving them, and what we're actually talking about. And yeah, don't know if that sort of answers it, but
yeah, it does. It's just viewpoints of working with young, talented people, and these are realities of people working with them, which would include psychs, listening to this sort of stuff. And probably last one, adolescents. For I'm hogging you really, Mark. That's my problem. Just adolescence is obviously fraught with risk-taking behaviours and sensation-seeking. Do you ever see that playing out in academy football?
Go on, explain to me a bit more, Tom, in terms of...
So what we know from adolescent and adolescent development, they have a higher risk sensation-seeking need, and the self-regulation is lagging behind that.
Yeah.
So that often, if you maybe, dare I say, we think back to our own childhoods where we didn't make the best decisions because we'd rather have fun than do something safe. You might see that play out on a football pitch, which might be taking one too many people on. That might be lashing out. That might be taking a shot where it isn't really on.
Yeah.
Do you ever see sort of that playing out in those kind of populations?
Yeah, but then probably, again, I'll probably go down to like the individual level as well, not necessarily as a group. You see that indifferently, and it's hard, isn't it, in terms of is managing the right word, like coaching that, in terms of you don't want to take that away from them. You want them to take risks, be brave, be creative, but also at the right time, which probably links back to that decision making, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
This is why I love coaching, because it's not necessarily, for me, it's not, there's always a right answer. It's like James mentioned before, the experience and the knowledge that you have, and I suppose going back to that toolbox, choosing the right tool at the right time. But for that individual, it might be that they need to take risks, they need to be creative. Fine, good. Can we support that? Can we, how do we encourage that? How do we design practices to encourage that, if that's what they need? If
they're a dribbler, for example.
Position-specific stuff. We do position-specific work on a Tuesday evening, but then down to an individual level as well. Obviously, within the academies, you have your individual learning plans as well, and considering what they need.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm just going to track a little bit on what Tom was saying about transitions. Remember when I was there at Wigan, Jake Campbell was a phase lead or age group coach, now academy manager. Remember him putting together a document on each player when they transition through age groups, and a lot of detail around their character, background, sort of home life and things like that. I think I've pinched that and I've got that somewhere still. Don't tell Jake, but yeah, and a lot of work that I've been following your player care officer, whose name I've forgotten. Sorry, but a lot of brilliant work. Lee, so a lot of brilliant work being done there. So I don't think it's just a question, more of a comment. But yeah, I've just kind of seemed very forward thinking and sort of caring academy setup you've got there.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great environment. Yeah, fantastic environment. That's probably why I've been there for 18 years. I think one thing we do try and treat the kids as kids. There's an expectation, but it is a fun, safe environment. And I know we ban them words around, but you know, it is an enjoyable place. Try and make it an enjoyable place for kids to go. The kids, you know what I mean? It's playing football, you kick it in the net, you stop it going in the net, and you're just having a bit of fun while you're there. You know what I mean? When we strip it right back. So yeah, no, that's important. And obviously Jake's one of the best, you know, he's very good. And obviously that's why academy manager now, he's great with that. I'm only part-time in terms of part-time meetings. We have phase meetings and we will, you know, discuss boys, we'll discuss transitions. School release is a big one.
Is that an MDT thing? So
yeah, but in a smaller phase, and then the full-time staff then relay that that information down. They'll discuss every individual boy in so much detail. It's unbelievable. I've had the privilege of seeing one of them meetings, and it's a full day thing. And you have everyone, like I say, the multidisciplinary team, all them in there. The ones that I'm directly in every block, they're more lead phase, part-time coaches, and then S&C's usually in there. And then, like I said, people like Lee Woods, player care, and other full-time members of staff come into the full-time, if you like, MDT meetings. But they have them quite a lot, and you know they spend a lot of time talking about the boys and what's best for them, really.
So you've been there from the start, I guess, because Tim Lees, I remember that was one of his phrases. You're always the boy before the player. So yeah, I guess that's just evolved, hasn't it? When particularly since the EPP's come in and you've gone Cap 2.
Yeah, Gregor Rioch sort of started that as well, didn't he? And he's now director of football. Yeah, he was very big on boy before player, and then stripped that back in terms of what that meant, and that's stuck, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think you've had that kind of long-term approach with players as well. There, that it's it's a long game, isn't it, with recruitment and what's the word I'm looking for? You're not kind of looking at immediate performance. You're looking more at potential, and you tend to keep players in the system for longer there.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we try. It's tough, isn't it? It's a tough system. You know, if I'm speaking open and honest, at the end of the day, it's a business, and it's not great. I don't like saying that, but yeah, we do try and do all them things. We do think about long-term development. We do try and stick with the boys. We're very keen on not bringing boys in at similar levels and blocking pathways for other boys, if that makes sense. If we've stuck with them, we're very keen on that sort of not blocking pathways for players. So our recruitment is, you know, well thought out, if that makes sense. We don't just bring in as many as we can as possible and flood the system. We have small groups, and we back our boys, and we believe, and this might sound arrogant, probably it is arrogant, but we believe we can give them what they need with the coaching program that we've got.
Yeah, I love that. I've been at clubs where it's been pretty much a revolving door policy, and it's that doesn't do anyone any favours, and that's telling you recruitment's completely wrong in the first place, isn't it? So I think going into that detail, and we use the kind of the ECB multiple times kind of analogy in our model, myself and Tom. So yeah, it's really good to see such good practice.
Yeah, it's excellent that, and I think you're right. Like taking that long-term development and that slow burner type approach. I think I'll get to a question, like you often as a coach trying to do the right thing from a long-term development perspective, giving them what they need at the right moment. You often as a coach might never see the fruits of that labour directly in the year you have them, for example. How do you manage that? How's that managed, or how are those messages given within the club to coaches? Because a coach might think, I want to see a result now. And they may never actually see that result, although they will have played a part.
Yeah, well, I'm quite comfortable with that. Like, learning takes time. You know what I mean? It takes a very long time. We're just a really small part of the boys' journey. I'm comfortable with that. You know, hardly anything in some ways. I'm quite a strong believer that we can actually do more damage than good. You know what I mean? Some of the boys that I've coached who've come through, you know, we're always going to be a player. You hear that a lot. They're always going to be a player. And my job as a coach is, you know, just to make sure I don't damage that or stop that. And I'm just creating these environments for them to thrive in, really, and just trying to help them along the way with little bits of information. Yeah, and we've been quite good at Wigan in terms of our productivity. So that's obviously, the coaches within the academy see that, and that's a bit self-fulfilling in some ways.
Yeah.
And oh, great that we're getting players. There's a pathway into the first team. We're getting boys through, and that helps us. And we do use that back now. So we've seen boys who've gone through, and we can relate to when they were in our phase, and if we stick specifically to 13s, 14s, and we've had them all the way through. What were they like then? And you see quite a lot of similarities. So the experience of seeing boys come through the group, certainly helps. And then you can make links as you see other kids coming through.
Yeah, nice. And again, just to probably move it on a little bit, inevitably coaches will come across work with other stakeholders in that process. So an example might be, let's just maybe say parents. So I'm thinking whether you're a grassroots coach, a full-time academy coach, part-time academy coach, you might come across parents. How might you approach working with parents? Because say at Doncaster, coach is part-time, time poor, they're racing from work. But they're maybe having a parent wanting a conversation. They're maybe having a message from a parent on a platform or something like that. How do you approach, what would you say is good practice to work with parents if you're a coach?
At Wigan, so for me, from my perspective, I'm not sure what I'll say is good practice from my perspective. So my perspective around parents is we should involve them as much as we can. So for coaches, I suppose, doing team talks at games maybe in front of the parents then allows them to see what you're trying to get them to do. So sometimes they might not be, because they're always going to talk to them in the cars on the way home, necessarily not getting mixed messages. So my big thing is trying to involve parents as much as possible, and obviously being open and honest with them. We're quite up. That's really important that we're going to have like the honesty and the authentic nature of it, and keeping parents up to date and them sort of things. That's really important. And then this is slightly different to what I've just said, but as a part-time coach, because of the time constraints, I don't have dealings with parents. The lead phase deals with like speech to parents, keeps them all up to date, and we have regular meetings, whether that's with the player care. So the parents always go on the journey with us, and we're ever grateful for the parents. They bring them down 3 nights a week, Saturday, Sunday, wherever. They do they're fantastic and amazing. We try and be honest and open with them through that journey. But me directly as a part-time coach, I get left to coaching, which
that's the realm you're in, isn't it, being a part-time coach? So Doncaster's similar. There's the ethos of we need to bring them with us, we need to inform them, we need to be open and honest. We did a workshop the other day, and we tried to kind of just give them a space to just talk about the challenges of being a parent in and around some full-time staff like player care, education, me as a part-time sort of psych. And actually, I think they really benefited from chatting to each other. So we were able to facilitate some of those and learn from those a little bit. And then I hope to put some practices in place at the club. So I think that's really useful. And then what about how might you work with player care and those other sort of personal, social, even psych? How do they fit in with the coaching process and program? Are they on the edges? And there's obviously no right or wrong. We're just interested to hear how it works.
Yeah, so player care is directly involved with the full-time boys, in and around it all the time. There's a lot of boys in the academy, isn't there? When you go from all the way through. But he certainly, gets in and around our 13s, 14s phase. He'll stay behind, watch training. He's there for the boys, in terms of a direct contact, and parents as well. He runs sort of the wellness, so when they come in, they do wellness surveys, and he feeds that back to us as coaches before sessions. So for example, Tuesday night, just someone had a sore knee, he messaged that through. We got that information before the session starts, and obviously linking in with the physios as well was important. We have two great psychologists. Don't know Emma Huntley and Laura Johnson, who are also at Edgehill University, and they're brilliant. They do some workshops with the boys and do some other activities as well, working with them. I think this will progress as we move forwards, and I'm sure you two are advocates of this. We probably need to be better in terms of sites working with coaches. And supporting us as coaches in that environment. But again, it's around the time and them sort of things. They work more with the boys. We know what they're doing, but in terms of isolation.
Yeah, I think that's massive in getting it on the grass. That's something we both really advocate, and maybe we're a big advocate of maybe sports psychologists in training doing even sort of your level 1, your level 2, and get a bit of an insight into that coaching side of it.
Yeah, we have an SNC within each phase. We're very lucky to have Mark Stone, who's at UCLan, great knowledge, really, really good at what he does. And obviously, he ties in with us in terms of the physical stuff, the stuff around peak height velocity, etc. The information that we need as coaches.
Yeah, I think that's really good that you get all that kind of information, and it's also I've seen sort of two versions of it. It's like everything going through the coach, so that could be psych skills, it could be integrated physical development into your sessions, or the coach becomes another cog.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to say which was right, and they both got benefits. You've got different specialists working with players, or it's quite a lot to put on a coach, isn't it? Everything.
Yeah. I'm not saying this is the right way. I think the way we work it is as a part-time coach, I can speak in that way. The lead it's different. He'll probably get higher volumes of info. Well, he will get everything really. The lead coach is very good. He wants all the information. For a part-time coach, it's the information that I need, if that makes sense. And then I work with, and then it's probably like you say, I'm a cog, and I am a cog of the other cogs that are around. The S&C is working. Coach gets them first, then they come to us, and some of that's integrated at times. But sort of how I experienced it, I suppose.
And James, I'm sure at like Oldham, obviously yourself, you'll be integrating stuff as a coach psych. Is that right at your end at Oldham?
Yeah, so I guess there's pros and cons to that on there. So I'm an age group coach. I'm delivering the psychology program to currently just the foundation, but hope to kind of set up a bit more of a department next season. Obviously not been back long, but yeah, it's ideally placed, I guess, to get it on the grass. So we'll do workshops in the classroom and then straight on the pitch. And I'll deliver both, which I'm not sure is a good or a bad thing, but it's good to just kind of, I guess, for the players to see it is continuous and not a separate entities, I think.
We've tried something a bit in between, probably your two versions at Doncaster, where we might, so the psychosocial development is mandated within the curriculum, within the coaching curriculum. It's positioned in there, so it's in and around tactical development, which is great. I think that's a great starting point. Coaches come into the workshops quite often, they're able to add real nice context. They might say, can you remember in the game last week, or we've got this coming up, so we could use this skill. And coaches are getting really, really, really good at that. And then often the psychs, me and some interns will be out on pitch side actually reinforcing some of the messages at opportune moments, like a little drinks break. Yeah. Or maybe part of a reflective discussion in the end. So we're very mindful not to enter the coach's work, because that's where they're working.
Yeah.
But also we're in and around trying to support the boys, but very, very carefully. So we're trying to get a bit better and smoother with that. Sort of like being present, but also being covert at the same time. And we find that kind of approach is working, although we're not doing any kind of research on it. It just feels right.
Yeah, it's interesting you said drinks break there, Tom. I see drinks break as a great opportunity to coach. Sometimes we send them off, don't we? And send them off to get a drink, but actually get your drinks, come over and spend that time. Working, if you like, or coaching. Yeah, it's good.
Well, sometimes we've tried to use it as the psych point, right? How people finding that? Can you, when you found that difficult, you might pull out an individual and just think, remember that strategy we sort of like keeping you concentrating? How's that going for you?
I like that.
There was very kind of like quietish moments that we can find without stepping on a coach's toes.
Nice. Yeah, sounds good.
Hopefully more to come on that. We'll see. What else do we need to ask James? What can we draw out of Mark?
I think we've got some absolute gold dust there, to be honest. If you think of anything else, Tom.
No, I think that's been brilliant. I've covered like adolescence, covered like coach behaviours, transition, support staff. Like, I think that's been really, really useful just to get your insight as a coach around all those things, Mark.
Yeah, but it's just my experiences, really. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying these things are right or wrong. It's just sharing experiences, and
yeah.
No, I think it's always good to hear someone who's kind of across different disciplines as well. So coaching and kind of lecturing and research. So I think they're kind of very complementary, aren't they?
Yeah, they're great. Right. Thank you very much.